Today, you'll hear a chat that I had last week with Tony Christini, who's a fig grower in West Virginia. And Tony's focus is on hardy and early ripening figs. You can check out Tony's website, which is mountainfigs.net. And Tony shares a lot of great information on his website with colors, shapes, flavors. And when I post this show, I will also, as a podcast, it'll go up tomorrow. I'll also be posting another chat that I had with Tony where he talks in more detail about his top fig varieties for cold climates, his top favorite 5. And you'll be able to find that and the podcast of this show that we're on right now at stephenbiggs.ca/radio, and just look for the past episodes link. Now, here is my chat with Tony. On the line with me, I have Tony Christini from Mountain Figs. Tony, welcome to the Garage Gardener Show.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here.
Well, maybe we could start by getting you to tell us about growing figs in West Virginia.
Well, it's a lot of fun. I first got into it, about 7 years ago, I guess, when I just kind of took a chance ordering one little fig plant out of from an online nursery when I was ordering some other things for around the house. And, it grew unbelievably well. The leaves were, so kind of beautiful and decorative. And then when I tasted the fruit, it was, unbelievably good. And that's what hooked me. So it just kind of got into it accidentally. I didn't really have a past history with it.
Okay. And tell us about your growing conditions there. What zone are you and what challenges do you face?
Well, it's zone 6B, so it's a short season. We usually get a first frost here about October 15th. It's come a little bit later this year and some other years. So, it's tough. I mean, the figs here, if you put them in ground, they will die back to ground level almost every year. One year they didn't die all the way back, but they usually die all the way back. So, I mostly grow in pots. I store the pots in a garage, although I do have some fig bushes in ground, and I always get some in-ground figs every year. But it's tricky. Figs just aren't native to this climate, so it takes some doing.
Well, you have been doing a lot of experimenting with varieties, and I wonder if you can tell us about the varieties that you've been focusing on. What kind of variety do you look for?
Well, originally I started looking for the kind of variety that would work best, that tasted great and would work best in this growing zone. And, pretty quickly discovered that variety was what's known as, it's known by a million names because it's so commonly grown in the sort of mid-Atlantic region in the U.S. from, Boston to Baltimore and inland. It's the hardy Chicago variety, also called Bensonhurst Purple, Marseille Black, Tacoma Violet. There's some controversy about whether or not these are different varieties or these are strains of a single variety. My view is that they're strains of a single variety, basically. Mm-hmm. And genetic testing has shown that there are 2 different genetic variations in this fig. It's limited genetic testing, so there may be more differences that are discovered down the road. But that's the fig that I struck upon that seems to be most workable here. And so, after that, I started looking for other varieties that were similar to it and that they would be productive and taste good in the difficult conditions here.
So aside from those varieties or those strains, do you have other favorites that you can tell us about?
Oh, sure. So, I think the best fig for growing here is that fig, that Mount Etna fig, or hardy Chicago, whatever you want to call it. But it's not the first to ripen, and that's what's really important, in a short season, is to get the fruit early so it can have a longer production season. There are 3 fig varieties that are very good that ripen a couple weeks earlier, and they are Ronde de Bordeaux, which is just a beautiful red, strawberry interior tasting fig, and Improved Celeste. So those 3 varieties give me the vast majority of my figs each year because they start ripening. For me, they start ripening about the 1st of August, give or take. those 3 early figs.
Okay.
And then after that, Mount Etna comes in about mid-August, and depending on how the pot or the plant is cultivated, they can ripen till frost. They don't always, but they could produce and ripen figs until frost. Really, all of those varieties.
Okay.
And they're all dark-colored, dark-skinned figs, which tend to just do better because they're smaller. They ripen earlier, so they do better than the bigger, light-skinned figs.
Mm. Well, on that note, one of the really useful things on your website I saw was that you have a guide to flavors and pulp and skin color of the different varieties. Tell us about that.
Well, not knowing anything about figs and seeing all kinds of confusion online or uncertainties online about what figs tasted like what, I just wanted to chart it out and figure it out, and I just felt like I had to do it myself with a lot of help from, a lot of other people who were looking into this and had, posted things online or done some research on it. So, I wound up with this chart that has, what does it have? Breaks it down into 10 different fig flavors, skin, and pulp colors, 5 dark-skinned figs and groupings, and 5 light-skinned fig groupings. So, my favorite flavor is the purple skin, the blue skin, purple skin, red pulp, punchberry, I call it, flavor. And that's what Mount Etna fig falls into.
Okay. Punchberry. I haven't heard that term before, but I like it. It's very descriptive.
Yeah, that's what it tastes like to me. So many of these figs with red interiors, they taste kind of like strawberry jam. The Mount Etna or the Hardy Chicago fig taste to me has a strong taste of grape in it. So it's got this like grape strawberry flavor that I think that's, the best flavor going, or one of the best flavors. And, a lot of the figs that are considered to be, the top figs I would classify in that punchberry category, like Black Madeira and all those kind of dark, premier dark-skinned figs.
Mm-hmm. Now, you grow much more than just figs. Tell us about that.
Well, I've actually gotten into growing other things fairly recently, and partly I did that because the fig season doesn't start here until August, mid-August really, when the main crops start to come in fairly heavily. You can get a few Breva figs earlier, but not many the way I cultivate things. So I wanted fresh dooryard fruit that ripened earlier. In fact, I'd love to have fresh fruit ripening throughout the growing season. Blueberries were a little bit difficult here, my favorite fruit before figs. Mm-hmm. Because we have pretty heavy deer pressure, and I really don't have a ton of space for them.
Okay. Recently,
I've started growing. I'm really excited about haskap or honeyberry, mm-hmm. which is somewhat similar to a blueberry, and it's from the subarctic region. And so I've started growing that. That ripens, right with the first spring frost, right in strawberry season, actually. And then 2 other fruits I've had, good initial success for that I'm really looking forward to are something called gumi or gomi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And that produces kind of like, I call it a cherry grape. It has a kind of a cherry shape and kind of a grape interior, and it's smaller